One big question. Will Stevie Johnson and his mustache three-peat on the red clay of Houston? I mean, it's a good question, but we've got lots of questions with the start of the clay season. Like, where's the Sasha Zverev game? It's not every year we get someone as ranked as high as Sasha Zverev at an ATP 250 in Marrakech, Morocco, which is in Africa, for those of you who don't know the geography. Does Tsonga still have what it takes to make a run at the French Open? Can we get a repeat winner on the WTA Tour? I think that's actually not even possible now with Belinda Bencic losing. We've got an interesting article from Herr Peter Bodo at the ESPN talking about the 16 different champions for the 16 different tournaments on the WTA Tour. Is this good? Is this bad? We talk about your comments, and we also talk about how could this be the future of the ATP Tour after the Big Four? Like I was saying, we'll talk about some of those questions from our four. We have 4 clay court tournaments going on right now. None of them are very big tournaments, but still, they are noteworthy. We'll talk about who we're looking at and what we're going to watch for at those tournaments. We got a funny story from a new biography on Roger Federer. We bid farewell to a great of the men's tennis game who is sadly retiring, although he's been kind of gone for a while due to injury, and so much more, all on today's Coffee Break Tennis. Jeez Louise, we really need a time limit on today's show because this is a big stack. This is out of control. Let's take a look. What do we got up first? Well, clay has officially begun. Now, I know for most of you, the clay season really begins with Monte Carlo. And don't worry, we'll be back, I believe, Friday. Friday, the draw for Monte Carlo will come out. We will do a Beer Hall Freitag Friday night. We will look at the draw. We'll talk about Rafa and Djokovic, who are going to be playing there. Of course, Roger Federer will not be there. He'll start his clay season later in Madrid. But in reality, clay has already begun, especially because we have a couple players that people are always interested in, already playing, like Sasha Zverev, the world number 3. Just barely world number 3 with Roger Federer right on his heels. And one of the most consistent players, I guess you would have to say, even though there's really no dominance, well, definitely no dominance, but no consistency really on the women's tour or even on the men's tour. Now, a slight caveat, Djokovic, Nadal, Federer, they're still dominating the majors. And that is the most important thing in tennis. But on the women's tour, well, we do have Osaka with 2 in a row, but she looks totally lost. To be fair, Djokovic with freaking 3 in a row, he looks totally lost as well, although I think we have more faith in him bouncing back. But Belinda Bencic has been one of the more consistent players this year. She had 1 win on clay so far. She's already got 2 losses, including a first-round loss to a lady, I believe, ranked number 182 in Switzerland, Lugano, und die Schweiz. Of all places, Belinda Bencic goes down first round, and Carlos Suarez Navarro, she was the 2 seed in that Lugano WTA tournament. She also loses first round. So your 1 and 2 seeds gone. Perfect to illustrate how this year has been for the WTA and for the most part with the ATP. Except for, of course, Roger Federer, who we can always rely on to always be good, always be interesting. So, what are these 4 tournaments? We got our eyes on Marrakech in Morocco. I usually watch this. I mean, if you're like me, every year you take a peek at Marrakech and watch a little bit. I don't remember who won last year, the year before. It's really not that big of a deal. It's an ATP 250. But it's more interesting this year because I think Kyle Edmund he was there last year as well. I don't remember how he did. But we got Kyle Edmund there this year, and we got Sasha Zverev, who's looking to right the ship. And the clay season usually is this way for a lot of players. Things don't do well, especially the players who prefer clay. Sometimes Rafa, things aren't going so well on the hard courts, or Rafa's knees fail in the Sunshine Double, which is a thing we're getting used to now. And then we go to clay, and that's their reset. That's where Rafa makes most of his money, although I do have something later in the show highlighting all of the achievements of Rafa Nadal off the clay, because I do think it's unfair to say that Rafa's one-dimensional. I mean, he's a legend. He's one of the all-time greats, and if you just look at his isolated stats off the clay, it looks pretty good. But we've got in Marrakech, take a look at the draw. We got Kyle Edmund and Tsonga tomorrow. Now, that's kind of like a heavyweight match. It's pretty interesting. Plus, Jo-Wilfried Tsonga, I'm sure he knows time is running out on his career. He would love to do another great run at a major, and I bet you he'd really love to do it in France, Frankreich, because he's a Frenchman. Wilfried Tsonga. So we get that match tomorrow. Who else is around? Fabio Fognini, Fernando Verdasco. They are out. I'm starting to feel like don't be too surprised if Fabio Fognini retires fairly soon. I mean, he's got a baby. He's made plenty of money. Flavia Pennetta, his wife, she's made plenty of money. Grand Slam champion. So they're out. Verdasco's out. Benoit Paire's around. He plays Herbert tomorrow, another Frenchman. Gilles Simon, the Cole Pickle, Pablo Andahar, who we have an interesting thing. He's worried about the future of tennis after Roger, Rafa, and Djokovic are gone. We'll get to that in a little bit. Also, we got Houston, another ATP 250, where it used to be green clay, and then they changed it to red clay. I think they should rename the tournament the Americans Suck on Clay Open. But one outlier, Stevie Johnson, who's only been to 2 finals on clay in his life in Houston, and he's won them both. He actually has a chance. I didn't look it up because it'd probably take forever, but I want to say he's got to be one of the first Americans to win a clay court tournament 3 years in a row, if he could do it. He hasn't even played a match yet. But for me, it's kind of an interesting storyline. When will we see an American win an ATP clay tournament? Who cares if it's a 250? Any clay tournament 3 years in a row. I mean, I think only Rafa wins clay tournaments 3 years in a row. So we'll watch out for that. Ryan Harrison, I've always been fascinated by him. He had so much potential, I always thought. He always seems to get really bad draws. And every time he builds a little momentum, a little rhythm, he gets a really bad draw somewhere. He had to play Karlovic, but he beat him. Beat him in straight sets. So good for him. We'll keep our eye on him. Who else? The Granola Bar took out Taylor Fritzy Boy Fritz. I tried to find the stats on Tennis TV, and apparently ATP 250s, they don't take the time to count the winners and unforced errors and where you're messing up. But it had to have been a ton of unforced errors. You know what Granola Bar really did in this match yesterday? He hit like 20 drop shots on Fritzy Boy, who never could quite get there in time. Most of the time, he was just totally bamboozled. A couple times, he just barely got there and hit it out. Taylor Fritz, one of the super talent futures. And he had Annacone. Former Federer Sampras coach Paul Anaconda Annacone was coaching Fritz. Did I miss that? Has that been happening for a while? And then the very next match with Bernie Tomic, Annacone was commentating. So, anyways, we'll see that. I like Fritzy. He's got a lot of potential, but man, clay really brings out the worst in some of the, especially Americans, who I guess they rely on power to overwhelm on faster courts, and you put them on a slow court, and you see like, wow, they can't construct a point. At least Stevie Johnson sure can. What else we got over there? Janko Tipsarevic, the Serbian with the glasses. He's been gone for years. He's back. Did he win a match in Indian Wells or Miami? I don't know. He's back. He's been back this year. He's playing Tennis Sandgren tonight. Probably by the time this video is up, they'll be on court as this video goes up, I bet. Or they might even be done by the time this video goes up. So that's a match to watch. Sam Querrey, Riley Opelka, always curious to see. The usual suspects are there. Nick Kyrgios was going to be there. John Isner was going to be there. Of course, Isner's foot is all messed up after losing to Roger Federer. Federer broke Isner's foot. So very sad to hear that. I'm kind of sad we don't have Kyrgios and Isner because that would have been the real, other than, Stevie Johnson. By the way, this is temporary. This is just in honor of Bernie Tomic, also with the mustache. They should call Houston the Mustache Open, especially if Stevie Johnson wins 3 in a row. So other than Bernie Tomic, he's got such an interesting game. I always watch him when he's on. I can't resist. I have to see because he's such a train wreck of a guy too. So he might do something crazy, and he's always going to hit crazy shots, guaranteed. So you got that to look out for. If you're not a diehard tennis fan, well, you're probably not even watching this show today. If you're not a diehard tennis fan, not too much going on. Let's take a look at the WTA side where, unfortunately, there's even less. Lugano, Switzerland, und die Schweiz. Belinda Bencic is out. Lottner, that's the name of the young Deutsche Mädchen who got her. Petra Martic, remember her? She had to pull out of it with some kind of left hamstring, left thigh injury, something like that. She's the one who took Bencic out and just played a really a good all-court game, coming to the net, really beautiful backhand volleys I remember seeing in that match. Just more consistent than Bencic. Took Bencic out last time in Charleston. Bencic beat, what's her name, Taylor Townsend, who's got a lot of power. She's kind of fun to watch. Lefty serve. She can play the net. Not in the best fitness. Fitness holds her back. Has for a while. Surprised she's not in super good shape yet. Carlos Suarez Navarro, we said that at the beginning of the show. She's out. You got, what kind of seeds do we got there? Van Uytvanck. Van Uytvanck, didn't she do something at the Australian Open this year? Kuznetsova, one of the great champions of women's tennis. She's there. She could freaking win the thing. So she'll have to play Tamea Baczynski. You guys remember Tamea Baczynski, the Swiss lady who, I might be wrong, but I'm pretty sure Tamea Baczynski, a few years ago, 4 or 5 years ago maybe at most, isn't she the one who had a great run at the French Open and she had quit the sport? She actually quit tennis, not to go play cricket or whatever Ash Barty did, Barty Party. She quit and went to go work in hospitality at a hotel. And then after she had to clean several hotel rooms, she said, this isn't for me, and she went back to tennis. And I think it was just kind of a fluke thing. She was just going to try it one more time, and if I lose, I lose. And she had a great run. The next thing you know, she's like a quarterfinals, semifinals, French Open, something like that. So she's out there. Kuzi's going to have to beat her. Pliskova's sister is there. Does that do it for you? Because honestly, I don't care which Pliskova it is. I'm not too interested. All right, let's go to Bogota. She's got an all right game. Really happy that Barty beat her. Barty's got a very interesting game. In Bogota, Maria Camila Osorio Serrano, 17-year-old Colombian girl, had a big win. Who did she? I don't remember who it was over. She upset somebody who was ranked much higher than her in the first round of Bogota. Why am I even talking about that? It's cool when you win one of your first experiences as a young teenager in your hometown tournament. But remember, in Miami, I got to play that 15-year-old girl. What was her? I think her name was Mariana Jimenez, and she had some middle names too. She had like 4 names just like that as well. I don't remember them. Maybe Camilla was one of them. I guarantee you those girls have played before, so maybe I don't feel so bad for her running me left to right, making me feel like I was going to barf after I drink all that beer and ate all that pizza at the Miami tournament. Anna Samova, another super talented teenager, really tall, a lot of potential. Anytime you're like 6 feet tall on the women's tour, but not like even taller than that, like Pliskova, you got the movement, but you still got the power. 6 foot, 6'1", like Sharapova, like Venus Williams, like Roger Federer, like Rafa Nadal. That's always a nice thing to have. Ostapenko, Yelena Ostapenko, French Open champion a couple years ago. She's there. Is she going to do something? She's the number 1 seed. I've been calling her Ostapenko because she's been doing it for a while. She's got so much power. She could be so much fun to watch, but she is just so erratic. Sarah Arani is a lucky loser. Anyways, let's get into this. Peter Bodo thing about the WTA and the state of it today, because I think this could be where we're going. Well, I don't think so necessarily because of a couple names, but a lot of people think this could be where we're going. And let's see what Herr Bodo's got to say about it. And then some of your thoughts on it as well. How are we doing on time? And we'll go another 10 minutes or so, and we'll get out of here. If you're bored by all the... Mr. Goat, who ran off, he's over there somewhere. He told me, if you talk about the WTA too long, no one's going to watch. They're all going to click out. So, prove Mr. Goat, the talking tennis cat, suspected sexist cat, prove him wrong. When top-ranked Naomi Osaka won her second Grand Slam tournament in succession at the Australian Open in January, it looked like the WTA might have found a player with sufficient gravitas. God, can we get gravitas out of the lexicon? Can we get lexicon out of the lexicon? To succeed, gravitas to succeed Serena Williams, right? So we'd all seen it. This was the new dominant player, and hey, she won 2 majors in a row. She could win 3 or 4 in a row at this point. But there's no denying she had a horrible time in Indian Wells in Miami. The hype was heavy. Referring to Williams and Osaka, an article in The Atlantic declared women's tennis is now a 2-headed monster. But Osaka drew a blank in the weeks following her down-under win. And now, more than 12 weeks into the new year, the WTA is not a 2-headed monster, but a 14-headed monster. Now, it's 16. Now there's been, since this article was written, it's 16 tournaments because Charleston and Monterrey wrapped up where we had Muguruza. We got to point out, 16 tournaments, but the Australian Open that Osaka won, is a lot more important than those other 15 tournaments. And Barty's Miami win, Bianca Andreescu's Indian Wells win, those are a lot more important than Charleston or Monterey or any of these other freaking tournaments. I'll put it on the screen. Not going to take the time to read through it, but you can look at it on the screen. So let's just put that caveat out there. Peter Bodo, if it is a 16-headed monster, you got one giant head for Osaka, two pretty big heads for Ash Barty and Bianca Andreescu, and then a bunch of and then 12 little tiny heads that are really not that important. But usually our great champions manage to pick up some other tournaments. What gives? Asks Herr Bodo. It's amazing, isn't it? Ash Barty said after she bagged the Miami Open. I think particularly on the women's side, the level has evened out a lot, and the depth has grown over the last few years. I think anyone in the draw has a legitimate chance of winning any tournament, said Ash Barty. This young generation, those up to age 22, may be the strongest yet. Barty, a newcomer in the top 10 at number 9 this week, could be its talisman. It seems a pity that the ATP has already locked up the whole next-gen thing. This group includes 18-year-old Bianca Andreescu, as well as a struggling 21-year-old who's already won a Grand Slam, 2017 French Open French Open champion number 31, Jelena Ostapenko. Belinda Bencic, who's turned 22 and has been on fire since she won Dubai in February. She's ranked number 21 after a long struggle with injury. We got number 4, Karolina Pliskova, Arina Sabalenka. Remember Sabalenka? What happened to Sabalenka? Just 20 years old, kicked off the WTA year with a commanding win in Shenzhen, China. By the time the Australian Open rolled around, she was at or very near the top of every pundit's most dangerous dark horse list. I remember when I was in Cincinnati with Peter Crunch Time Coaching Freeman last year, who's a online tennis teaching guru and genius. Check out Crunch Time Coaching if you're trying to learn how to play tennis. Learn tennis with me and Pete. By the way, there's some exciting stuff from me and Pete coming up pretty soon, by the way. Keep your antenna up for that. But anyways, I remember in Cincinnati with Pete, I remember seeing Sabalenka and thinking, who is this? I've never heard of Sabalenka before, and she was just killing everyone. Just phenomenal power. Sabalenka lost in the third round at the Australian Open, but is still ranked number 10 and has really not had anything working for her since then. Another powerful motivator is the problem that recent Grand Slam champions have had consolidating their success. Ostapenko is outside the top 30. Garbiñe Muguruza, a two-time Grand Slam champion, is down to number 19. Ash Barty's contention that anyone can win these days doesn't sit very well with those who long for the days when Serena, Justine Henin, my favorite, Chris Evert laid down the tennis law. Steffi Graf. Some around tennis miss dominant players and marquee rivalries. Many of you, as I'll get to your comments and tweets in a moment on that. Robert Lansdorf, great legendary tennis coach, worked with male and female players. He's coached the games, shaped the games of numerous champions Robert Lansdorf has, including Tracy Austin, Lindsay Davenport, Pete Sampras. I believe he worked with Sharapova too, right? Today you look at a Muguruza or an Ostapenko and you wonder, what the hell happened? Yeah, no kidding. They are losing, but not necessarily getting beat. They aren't Ostapenko especially. They aren't losing because the other players are better, but because they're playing bad. Nobody seems tough enough to hang in there and play the same kind of tennis that brought them up. But he feels that unlike Davenport, Monica Seles, many of today's established players don't have the requisite consistency and become easy pickings for the rising generation. I hate to say, says Lansdorfer, I hate to say these players aren't mentally strong. That's too simple, but it may be a part of it. One other answer may be that they have all this power with the advanced strings, the rackets, the balls, but they don't know how to control it. The consistency just isn't the same. Chris Evert, legend of the game and ESPN analyst, says during a broadcast of the Miami Open women's final, the thing I'm seeing is that these women, like Osaka, are having trouble developing momentum. Evert added that, in the past, one sure way to identify a player destined for greatness was the way success made their ambitions burn with greater rather than less intensity. This applies to the men's game very much with some of our next-gen failures. Not failure, but we've seen it for a while now. A big part is the great big four. A big part is the big four and all the dominance. But another thing is, look how many guys have taken the Verdasco route. You remember Verdasco famously said, "Hey, it's not worth all the extra time and work I got to put in to be number one, like Federer, Nadal, Djokovic. I can make like almost as much money and be top 10, top 20, and work way less hard and enjoy my life, live a little. The Bernie Tomic approach. So I go back to what Everett said. Success made their ambitions burn with greater rather than less intensity. After lasting success, they wanted more and more. They wanted it immediately. There were no, I have plenty of time, excuses. My oh my. Think about that. First person that comes to mind for me, Felix Auger-Aliassime. Soon as he lost to John Isner in Miami, what did he do? He went to go practice his serve after those double faults that let him down when he served for the first set, served for the second set as well. He's the only one I can think of. Maybe Tsitsipas too. Tsitsipas. Who, by the way, you guys ever seen Racket Comedy? Racket Comedy, he's got a YouTube channel. He's pretty fun. His name's Matthew too. He hearted my comment. And he commented on the channel too. I was going to highlight what he said. We'll do that when we do comments. Or you know what? I'll do it right now. Off of my memory. I'll put it on the screen. I think what Matthew said was something like, yo, bro, I can vouch. I was in Miami, and he sat in some really nice seats, and he can vouch for those expensive seats being mostly empty. Anyways, Racket Comedy, I watched his video from Miami, his vlog he made. It was pretty funny because before he'd gone to, I guess it was like the Orange Bowl, some kind of junior event. I think it was the Orange Bowl. And he got to interview Stefanos Tsitsipas. And Tsitsipas was really friendly and really cool. And then he saw Tsitsipas in Miami. He was like, Stefanos, do you remember me? Please. And Stefanos just walks past everyone. And if I remember when I was in Miami, I got to see that Shapo and Tsitsipas match. I got to sit really close to where the players come out. And I remember Shapo came out, and he was kind of bouncing around and being really friendly with there was like a ball boy or some kind of volunteer helper standing there. There's a security guy there. There's one of the ladies with a microphone who's going to introduce players. Some of the people that volunteer to help make the tournament work, they were standing there in that player holding area outside the grandstand. And Shapo's smiling at him, shadow stroking, talking to him a little bit, being really friendly. And Tsitsipas, he's giving everyone the cold shoulder. He's ignoring. He's just looking straight down. He's not talking to anyone. And I thought, that's kind of weird. Tsitsipas doesn't seem too friendly. I more and more wonder when Fonini said some of these next-gen guys are disrespectful in the locker room, and I thought maybe it's Sasha Zverev. And he said it's like they're already winning Grand Slams in their mind or something like that. I'm starting to wonder if it's Tsitsipas maybe. Anyway, so Matthew from Racket Comedy, he said, Stefanos, do you remember me? And Tsitsipas didn't talk to anyone. He asked one kid, he's like, how disappointing is it? He's like, man, we've been here for hours waiting for Tsitsipas, and he didn't even sign one autograph. Anyways, check that video out if you haven't. It's pretty funny. I'll link to it at the end of the video. I'll put it on the end screen at the end of today's video. But anyways, back to my original point. Tsitsipas, Felix Auger-Aliassime, maybe Shapo. Just because you're friendly, I don't want to fault you. But I give Shapo points off for the way he played Joker at the Australian Open and for the way he played Federer in Miami. And the whole he's my idol and the way it's okay to say you're my idol. Because after all, Osaka said Serena's her idol, and then she beat her. But Shapo kind of played Federer in Miami like he's my idol. Like he played him that way throughout the match. Anyways, to wrap this up, I don't think the WTA or the ATP, once the Big Four are gone, will be in trouble because there will be a lot of interesting players for fans to pick from. Very true, from Mr. Lansdorp. Maybe people don't care if nobody dominates. They're only in trouble with people like me because I know what it's like to have those other players around, the ones who dominate. Then Bodo puts his own opinion on it. Even if no dominant player materializes in the near future, tennis is likely to be unpredictable and exciting. But I'm with Lansdorp. Not for me, because I lived during the Big Four. I saw Roger, Rafa, and Djokovic dominate, and I saw some guys like Andy Murray push their bodies to the point of breaking their hip. You could argue for Andy Murray. Work so freaking hard. We also saw guys like Verdasco with a lot of talent who said, hey, I'm not going to work that hard. I'm making millions. I'm working hard enough. I'm going to just enjoy my life a little. But we got to see some guys like Wawrinka, Del Potro, Murray, Cilic work so freaking hard to get there and challenge. And guys like, and then of course we get to see guys like Fonini, guys like Kyrgios with such tremendous talent that they can challenge at times, but never consistently enough to put a dent in the dominance. To me, this is a way better way to watch tennis. You got your 3-4 guys who are always ones to watch out for. If one goes down early, Federer loses early, Nadal loses early, you got the other ones to look out for at the majors. or the Masters tournaments. And then you've got a bunch of interesting characters, like Robert Lansdorp was saying there. Get a bunch of interesting characters to pick from, like a Grigor Dimitrov. We've always been curious, what's he going to do? He's fun to watch. Of course, like, Stan Wawrinka, Del Potro. Anyways, you get my point. You get these main guys to always watch, and then you get these interesting guys like, can they challenge this week? It's made it much more interesting. Not so much to me on the women's tour, because you just had Serena dominate. Venus, too. Venus is a lot of fun to watch. But you didn't have, it was more unpredictable. I think of like Daenerys Safina. Remember her? I think of Eugenie Bouchard, who is so exciting, and then totally collapsed. She just announced recently that Eugenie Bouchard is taking a leave of absence. She's not going to play. She's quitting tennis indefinitely to get her mind right. She says to get healthy. She didn't say if it was an injury or she's talking about mental health. Who knows? Like, women's tennis was much more interesting to me when we had Kim Clijsters, Justine Henin, Serena Williams, Maresmo. We had all these pretty good players that could win, and then a couple like more dominant, like Justine Henin and Serena. You always wanted to see them clash. Sharapova too, you got to throw her in the mix there. It was pretty interesting, but more recently, to me, it's been much less exciting. It's cool to watch Wozniacki and Simona Halep, but I think there's no denying, comment below what you think or if you disagree. There's no denying it was a lot better with the Big Four. All right, we're running out of time, and I promised to we got to get out of here, but let me just do this really quick. Pablo Andujar, he says, you have to enjoy them. Djokovic, Federer, Nadal, they're the three greatest players in history. What makes me afraid is that you do not see younger players behind. Now, Felix Auger-Aliassime gives me a lot of hope. He seems like the right stuff. He seems like what Chris Evert was talking about. Stefanos Tsitsipas as well. But Tony Nadal and Tennis365.com pointed out Alexander Zverev should already be world number one at his age. Zverev is widely regarded as the top young player on the ATP Tour, and is currently number 3 in the world. Nadal, though, Tony Nadal, Uncle Tony, says that this is perhaps best explained by the advent of the technological age. Carlos Moya won his maiden French Open at 21 years. Boris Becker, Michael Chang, I do not know what happens, but before players won much more than now, as in when they're younger. Something failed in training with the younger guys. You see Zverev playing, and at the age that Leighton Hewitt and Roddick were already the world number ones. Nadal had already won several Grand Slam trophies. Kids are too protected, and they want to have everything. I've said it many times. What's good for a professional player is not good for a kid. Before, it was a game of control and fight. Now, it's different, and you have to adapt. All right, I'm going to pull 2 things out of here, and I'm going to save the rest for another time because we're running out of time. But let's take a quick listen and look at some of the tweets from you guys about this no dominance tour business. It's hard to root for someone with so many winners. Kids, too, can't idolize someone who, if he's not winning consistently. Most of us became Fed heads or Raw fans because we fell in love with them during our childhood, teenage days when they were winning everything. Great point from The Real Slim Shady at NeuroPalm89. Lita Samperi said, it makes it all a blur, as if there's only one level, and whoever is better health, mental-wise on the day week will win. Kind of like the surprise wins over the big 3 through the years. A good run for one day, then nothing. Only now it might lead to a trophy. Robert says, this is expected on the WTA Tour, but unexpected in the ATP lot. I suppose the change of guard is happening, and it must be good for tennis in general. Sooner or later, we will have multiple tourney winners in the coming months, provided Rafa doesn't sweep the clay. Lauren says, nope, I just want Roger to win everything. That makes it exciting for me. And me as well. Laura B, I find the jockeying for position on ATP exciting at the moment simply because Fed still reigns supreme, but 4 to 6 pretenders are challenging, all with different styles. I don't mind top 3 being beaten, but I would like to see 2 or 3 or 4 rising above the rest. More convincingly, it will come. Omar of the Omar Oz. We love Omar here at Coffee Break Tennis. He says, I like to see 2-3 players dominating with occasional shockers. With women's tennis, it's all about shockers. And it's been like this for almost 5-6 years now, since Serena had a stretch of 180-odd consecutive weeks at number 1. Surya Teja said, I don't like the idea of having a different champion every week. I agree it makes more competitive, but I just can't cope with that uncertainty and pressure every week. I'd quit watching tennis altogether until I find a Fed, Rafa, Novak, Murray. They may not win it all, but we trust. Timo Partinen says, a different champ almost every week makes it more chaotic. A few eminent players competing for the same titles, emphasis, different playing styles. A clear number 1 creates a situation of wanting him/her dethroned on his last point. RF is weirdly somewhat of an exception. Joseph Court, I don't like the changing champions. There's no one to kind of rely on all year round. I like to have dominating figures. Amcare now, seeing different champion at different tourney might reduce demigod images and fan worships, but common public will get inspired as to say to themselves, I too have a chance then. LVO 811, who is apparently like C3PO or somebody from Star Wars. Let's be honest here. Only one player on ATP Tour has won 2 titles. Of course, it's the best player alive. So there's a variety in playing styles. Winning tournaments, it is exciting to some extent that a lot of players can win, but you need a stable top. Ahmad Datia says, the constant competition rewards whoever's playing better at any particular tournament. The swing of a match can change so quickly that it is already stressful even to watch. The rankings work the same. Players are part of the system, and I don't mind a winner. Susan says, unpredictability is so much more interesting. It's a sport. Who needs to feel secure as a spectator? Well, I had a couple things I wanted to do, but we're all out of time, folks. I mean, we had a lot of material for today. We'll definitely have to do another show this week. Comment below what you think of this thing and what you think. Is it going to happen to the men's tour? A lot of great comments there. And I got to say, I agree with what the majority of people were saying. It's much more interesting to have your 2, 3, 4 dominating figures and then see all these other interesting characters around the tour and see when they can challenge. And when you do get a shocking upset, it's truly shocking. It's truly exciting. When you get a shock, like Omar said, every week, it starts to be just a bunch of noise, a bunch of nonsense. The shock, the big win, seems kind of almost meaningless. But hey, maybe I'm crazy. Thanks for watching Coffee Break Tennis. Make sure you keep your eyes out for the battles of the mustaches going on in Houston, Marrakech, what's going to happen to Ostastinko. And don't worry, we got Monte Carlo coming up soon, and things will get real interesting. See ya!